Xbox has provided us with a ton of games on Xbox Game Pass so far this year, from some big AAA releases to some gorgeous indie gems. The ever-growing backlog of games is certainly growing larger, and it's a very hard task keeping track of all these new games. Today, we will be covering the 30 best Xbox Game Pass games released so far in 2024. My name is Fletcher, this is Xbox Nation. Subscribe for more Xbox content every other day, and let's dive right in. Hell Let Loose is a large-scale World War II battlefield-like shooter that doesn't exactly break new ground. However, what Hell Let Loose delivers in terms of depth, strategy and immersion, it executes on that vision far better than most of its competitors. Teamwork provides a distinct tactical advantage in Hell Let Loose, as you need to work together in order to secure victory. With incredible attention to detail and an authentic military experience where you can die from one shot, you will easily be left on your toes in every single match. Ubisoft blessed us with another Assassin's Creed game on Xbox Game Pass earlier this year, and gamers finally got to experience one of the first games that arrived for the next generation. Assassin's Creed Valhalla follows the story of Eivor, who is a legendary Viking warrior, as you explore England's Dark Ages and also get to experience the snowy countryside of Norway. This Assassin's Creed is quite possibly the largest entry in the franchise's history, with well over 200 hours worth of content and gameplay. There is plenty to experience, as you can imagine, and I do still get enthralled to this day when executing a raid on a local settlement. One game that actually joined Assassin's Creed Valhalla on the very same day is the indie darling known as Figment. Figment 2 was added towards the back end of 2023, but now we can experience the fantastic prequel to this action-adventure game. Figment has always had a pretty unique concept, and not only puts you in a surreal universe, but has you attacking foes and taking on some pretty complex puzzles. The music in this game is exceptional, especially with the boss fights that you'll encounter, as they are all centered around their own musical beats. Coming out of nowhere and instantly establishing itself as one of Game Pass's best games, Palworld is just unbelievably good. Pocket Pair aimed for the stars by delivering a project that, on paper, appears to spread itself too thin. However, the 2024 game comes together to create a surprisingly cohesive experience. Now, ultimately, this is still an early access release that is a work in progress, so anyone who jumps in should expect to encounter a few bugs and issues along the way. There is a large update including a new island, PALs and PvP coming at the end of June, so definitely check this out if you haven't done so already. We had the next entry in a fan-loved series arrive this year, and that is Turnip Boy Robs a Bank. This is a great follow-up to the impressive first entry and is well worth diving into with an open mind. The developers did bring some big changes from the original, such as a top-down shooter and roguelike elements, which will definitely shake up the traditional formula, but one thing that hasn't changed is Turnip Boy's life of crime. Turnip Boy Robs a Bank sees Turnip Boy joining forces with the Pickled Gang against a botanical bank, and the sequel's changes also include additions to the game's accessibility options. This is a great indie and reviewed very well, and is well worth a play just for the humor alone. JRPG fans rejoiced earlier this year with the fantastic Persona 3 Reload. This is a remake of the original third entry in this mammoth franchise and was an incredible release by Atlas. This dropped onto Xbox Game Pass day one for all Xbox Game Pass subscribers across PC, console, and cloud. Persona 3 Reload brought with it a brand new voice cast, which were all changed from the original PS2 game, but still kept that authentic feel we know and love. The remake includes a wealth of changes that bring this genre-defining RPG up to modern-day standards, and all in crisp 4K. This next title got released last year, and was a surprising hit, especially since it was in development hell for so many years. We finally saw the release of the excellent Dead Island 2, and it finally came to Game Pass this year. This time, instead of a beach resort like the previous entry, we are instead being introduced to a hellish version of LA with even more guts, guns, and zombies. There are still a ton of iconic locations to explore, some very large live characters, and a large open playground filled with swaths of the undead. The gore system in this game is unlike anything that I've ever seen before, and really does emphasize the outlandish combat that Dead Island has always thrived on. Even if it's not as synonymous with JRPGs as Final Fantasy or Dragon Quest, Bandai Namco's Tales is one of the genre's most beloved franchises. The 2021 release serves as a great introduction to the IP, and since the story is not connected to any previous releases, newcomers can jump into this project without hesitation. Telling a fairly major story that tackles themes of discrimination and oppression, Arise blends strong storytelling with addictive combat, likable characters, and a fair amount of secondary content. While the campaign is quite long, new settings and mechanics are introduced frequently enough to ensure things remain interesting throughout. Now, many are mixed on this next game, and that is due to it being more action focused and shying away from what the series was known for. Xbox Game Pass subscribers finally got to experience the Resident Evil 3 remake. This game is seen more as a DLC to Resident Evil 2, and that is due to the short runtime. However, playing as Jill Valentine again and facing the horror threat of Nemesis is certainly fantastic on the current generation. It has a great story and solid gameplay with stunning graphics, and I have no doubt that many of you will enjoy this experience. If you're looking for a shorter Resident Evil story, then certainly give this one a go. Lightyear Frontier arrived onto Game Pass via Game Preview, and is a farming game with a whole unique take that has never been seen before. You essentially settle down on a beautiful new planet and begin your farming adventure as you build a farm, plant and harvest alien crops, and discover some ancient secrets. Not only does the game look absolutely stunning graphically, but you can also explore it with your friends in online co-op. The amount of customization options and tasks to complete are absolutely incredible, and the game seems super well polished even though it's only an early access. One game that I kept my eye on for some time was Warhammer 40k Bolt Gun. Don't get me wrong, this is probably one of the smallest games on this list, and many of you won't have heard of it. However, seeing a Warhammer inspired game set with the same visual style as the traditional Doom 64, it was always destined for success. This is ultimately a traditional shooter experience, so you can expect paper-thin enemies, static death animations, and color-coded keys and doors. As a Space Marine, you are dropped in with a boatload of weapons and take on hordes of the chaos in some fairly large open areas. I'm surprised we've never seen this style before for the franchise, but it's one that was a smash hit at launch. I've played through this game already and recommend it to all Game Pass subscribers, and that is Evil West. This game really reminds me of games from the 360 era, which certainly isn't a bad thing, as it's a one and done story, but really emphasizes a great narrative and some incredibly addictive combat. The combat may seem rather bare bones early on when you experience the game, but it does get more complex and rewarding just a few missions in. The story is close to what we've seen before in many games, but it does what it has to and does it incredibly well. I cannot really say more than I highly recommend this to anyone who enjoys the idea of being a Nikola Tesla cowboy pummeling vampires to a rather chunky pace. Easily one of the biggest games to arrive on Game Pass this year is the AAA juggernaut Diablo 4. This was the first Activision Blizzard game that entered Game Pass since the acquisition closure, and my god, is this an excellent game, especially if you've never tried it before. Diablo 4 was one of last year's biggest hits, and with its seasonal updates, the game is getting a lot better since its initial launch period. If you're unfamiliar with the series, it's a ARPG with dark fantasy gruesome story and has really brought this style of game up to modern day standards. We saw a trailer for Vessel of the Hatred at the Xbox Showcase recently, and it looks like Diablo is getting back on track with a darker feel that fans loved. If you love racing games, then Hot Wheels Unleashed 2 took everything that was fantastic about the original game and amped everything up to 11. There are a lot of new and better tracks than the original, more cars to collect, and the additional driving mechanics really solidify this entry as one of the best arcade racers for the current generation. As to be expected, you can make your own tracks and publish them online, and you get to play with friends in some really chaotic and fun races. The attention to detail on each Hot Wheels car still blows me away today, and really shows that Milestone put care and attention into this game. Before we dive into the remaining games, do consider subscribing for more Xbox content every single day, as 88% of you have not subscribed to this fast growing Xbox channel. Also, let me know in the comments below what you're currently playing on Game Pass. I've been so addicted to the free to play game X Defiant recently, and to be honest, it's been a great time. Thank you all for your continued support, make sure you hit that like button, and let's dive into the remaining games. A game that actually swam its way back onto Xbox Game Pass is the excellent shark RPG Maneater. Maneater is a single-player action RPG set in the Gulf Coast's unforgiving waters. You will have to fight to survive in the open ocean, swamps and rivers, with danger lurking at every single depth. Your only tools are your wits, your jaws, and an uncanny ability to evolve as you feed. It is a remarkable game by any standard, and many gamers still go on about this hidden gem until this day, and I think many still definitely need to give it a go. The racing and LEGO fans amongst us were incredibly happy back in April as we got to experience LEGO 2K Drive. This game centers around a massive open LEGO world called Bricklandia, where you'll go on a great driving adventure. There are a ton of races to partake in, building your own dream rides, and defeating a large cast of wild racing rivals. The game is very similar with that to The Crew 2, with its quick vehicle switching so you can fly, drive and sail with your own unique creations. As to be expected, it is a 2K game though, so there are quite a few microtransactions, but the sole game itself is very well done and really nails the driving game that we wanted to see in the LEGO universe for quite some time. Ayuden Chronicle 100 Heroes was another promising game that made its way onto Game Pass in April. It's a modern take on the classic RPG experience that lets you choose from a massive roster of 100 unique heroes, all tasked with saving the world from total destruction. Each character does come packed with their own unique skills and abilities that come in handy when fighting enemies in turn-based battles. But fighting's not all you will do in this game, as there's a vast world to explore, a cast of quirky characters to meet, and a rich story to shape by the choices that you make. It has fairly decent reviews across all platforms, but many did notice that pacing was always an issue. This can certainly be a make or break for JRPGs like this, but I certainly recommend giving it a go nonetheless. Now, I was actually so glad to see that Aggro Crab released their indie game, and it was a huge hit on release. Another Crab's Treasure, believe it or not, is a Dark Souls inspired adventure in which players will battle as a hermit crab. With some fantastic Souls combat, a pretty in-depth gear and shell system, and an intriguing story, it is well worth a play for any subscriber. The fact this game is still referenced as a Shells-like is just absolutely hilarious. And one cool aspect is that due to the nature of the enemies you'll face, it enabled the devs to create some awesome natural strafing abilities and combat variety. This is one game I never expected to be so good, and it blew us away on its release and is a high recommendation from here at Xbox Nation. Manor Lords was a huge hit on its release, with over 1 million players trying it on launch day. It is a medieval strategy game featuring in-depth city building, large-scale tactical battles, and complex economic and social simulations. You will get to rule the lands as a medieval lord, and as the season pass, the weather changes and cities will rise and fall. The game is utterly outstanding, not only graphically but mechanically, and has one of the most addictive gameplay loops I've ever experienced in a strategy game. Being made by a single dev still blows my mind, and it is a must-play for anyone who has PC Game Pass. Now, Lords of the Fallen takes on a challenge of bringing great game mechanics and a linear story to the structure of what a Souls-like is. Not to be confused with its predecessor of the same name, this title takes on a more fluid and linear approach to the franchise, making the mechanics flow better than your typical Souls title. You will play as a lamp bearer, traversing the brutal world 1,000 years after the original game. The world of Axiom is your playground, and as a lamp bearer, you can resurrect, utilize magic, and see a world beyond the veil of the living. This was one of the most recent additions to the Game Pass library last month, and was a welcome one at that. One game that you need to pick up and play is Star Wars Jedi Survivor, and this game is certainly one that I can highly recommend. Jedi Survivor is a follow-up to the fantastic Jedi Fallen Order, and follows the Jedi Cal Kestis as he goes on a journey to raise the Jedi Order and destroy the Empire. Respawn worked wonders in this last entry, and I really enjoyed the combat and semi-open beautiful environments. I felt the last game really encapsulated the feel of the Star Wars universe, and this new game definitely elevates what we already experienced. This was easily one of my favourite games that released last year, so definitely give this one a go. Tomb Raider Definitive Edition dove onto the service, and it's easily the best of the 3 games in the new trilogy. This is the critically acclaimed action-adventure game which started the trilogy reboot, and it came back to the Game Pass, which was excellent. You will have to endure high-octane combat, customize weapons and gear, and overcome grueling environments to survive Lara Croft's first adventure. This game has such a fantastic atmosphere, and I can highly recommend this title for the story alone. And if that isn't enough, then you also have the other 2 games which are available on Game Pass. Now, we had Kona rejoin Game Pass earlier this year, but we also received the second entry in the series, Kona 2 Broom. This is the continuation of the interactive tale of Kona, and this title offers players an immersive first-person narrative experience with a unique storytelling mechanic. You will have to explore the rustic setting of a rural mining village in northern Canada in 1970, and ultimately uncover the mystery of the bizarre mist called the Broom. This game really builds upon the structure of the first Kona game, but goes in different directions, which sometimes is successful and sometimes isn't much. These past couple of years have brought us a resurgence of cat games, and finally we got our hands on Little Kitty Big City. Think of the massive hit Untitled Goose Game, but ultimately replace the goose with a cat and you have this amazing indie experience. As the title suggests, you are a cat living in the big city, and you must explore the open world filled with lots of surprises and ultimately find your way home. There is a plethora of customization for your kitty and a multitude of different quests to complete. Many love this indie, and it might be one of the best indie releases of 2024 so far, so it's well worth a play with Game Pass. This year saw one of the biggest Xbox first-party releases of the Xbox Series generation so far. Senua's Saga Hellblade 2 was graphically incredible and really pushed the boundaries of what games can achieve on the Xbox Series consoles. The story follows Senua's next steps across a stunning 10th century Iceland, taking you through dark and dangerous encounters seen through the eyes of someone who experiences psychosis. That said, the length of the game did let many players down, and it didn't build much upon what was loved about the original game, which did lead to a very mixed launch. Still, this game is a very high recommendation for the current generation of consoles, and it's one game that I loved every minute of. An excellent horror game which any fan of the genre should play is The Quarry. This is an interactive drama horror game that is coming from Supermassive Games, who are the minds behind the cult classic hit Until Dawn. This time the game is set on the last day of summer camp, where teenage counselors of Hecat's Quarry are throwing a party to celebrate, and as you can imagine, things take a dark and blood-drenched turn as partying turns into life or death situations. If you're intrigued about the idea of a 10 to 15 hour interactive movie, or a game that blends cinematic storytelling with occasional player input, then this is the game for you. After many months of asking and seeing some heavy discounts, Xbox Game Pass subscribers finally got to play Immortals of Avium. This is the single player first person magic shooter that came out earlier last year from the new Ascendant Studios, and tells the story of Jack as he joins an elite order of battle mages to save the world on the edge of abyss. The head of the studio went on record quite a few months ago, stating that they were in talks with the Xbox Game Pass team, and it's finally great to see this game land into the service. There was a recent FSR update which brings better performance and stability, so this is a great time to enjoy this brand new IP, and from experience, it's incredibly fun. Now, a game that was originally brought to us by Google Stadia, which I have played, is Orcs Must Die 3. Orcs Must Die 3 brings us a tower defense like you've never seen before, with hordes of orcs trying to cause mayhem and ultimately destroy your base. This game has a tremendous scale and brings us some pretty spectacular moments with hundreds of orcs on screen at one time. You will also get to play this in solo or co-op with a massive arsenal of traps and weapons at your disposal. You'll have to ultimately slice, burn, toss and zap hordes of orcs in this long-awaited successor in this award-winning series. Now, this next game is quite a huge surprise to see on Game Pass, and that is the cult classic No More Heroes 3. This game was always traditionally known as being solely on Nintendo consoles, but this entry finally made the jump to Xbox last year. No More Heroes 3 follows the Otaku assassin Travis Touchdown as he takes up his trusty beam katana once more and slashes his way through 10 of the deadliest fighters in the galaxy. If you love hack and slash games, then you will fall in love with this entry, as the combat is fantastic and there's an awesome OST to accompany each fight. From experience, there are certain parts of this game that really do drag on, but the boss fights and storytelling really make up for it. The Callisto Protocol was one of those games which everyone wanted to see succeed and be the best version of the survival horror action game that we've seen since the original Dead Space series. Unfortunately, it didn't really live up to the hype, but it's still a fairly decent experience and well worth trying on Xbox Game Pass. Ultimately, the name of the game is to survive and escape the horrors of Callisto. This will be done by using a unique blend of shooting and brutal close quarters melee combat to fight your way through the maximum security Black Iron prison. The gore and visuals in this game are outstanding and are easily the highlight of this entire experience. What is your favourite addition on Game Pass so far this year, and what would you like to see added onto the service? Let me know down below. Like the video if you enjoyed it, as it really does help out the channel, and subscribe for more Xbox content content every single week. Whilst here, why don't you check out the video on screen now of the 30 new Xbox and Game Pass games that were announced at the recent Xbox showcase.